Bismillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulullah. Sorry, the brothers, sisters. I said I'll be around 10 o'clock. I had some delays because I had to find a wire. The other wire was broken, so it was not charging my phone. And my phone was low on charge, so now I found a proper wire to get my phone charged. So Dr. Asrar Ahmed, obviously, he's a prominent figure in the Indian subcontinent. He's a Hanafi Mu'tadil scholar, meaning not a blind follower. And he used to be a medical doctor, but then he worked hard in the field of da'wah, and he started giving weekly lessons of tafsir, which Bayan al-Quran, which became very popular in Pakistan. And they used to be run on cables and then on many TV channels, on Peace TV. And then the doctor gained an international fame, and he made his famous Jamaat in Pakistan, the Jamaat Tanzim-e-Islami. So Dr. Asrar Ahmad, he used to be first in the Jamaat-e-Islami of Maulana Maududi, and then he left it. Like many other Al-Hadith scholars, there were members of the Jamaat-e-Islami, like Sheikh Abdullah Ghafar Hassan Rahmani, one of the former students of Sheikh Ubaidullah Mubarak Puri. And Sheikh Abdul Ghafar Hassan, he was teacher in Medina University for many years. And like Sheikh Abdul Rahim Ashraf, these were the two preeminent scholars in Pakistan who were member of Jamaat Islami. In India, some of the Ahl Hadith preeminent scholars who were member of Jamaat Islami were Maulana Amin Athari. Maulana Amin Athari, he was the nephew of Allama Abdurrahman Mubarak Puri, the teacher of Sheikh Taqiyuddin Hilali. Because what happened is, Abdurrahman Mubarak Puri's brother passed away. So he married his brother's wife. It was a second wife, not the mother of her children, to look after his nephews, because Abdurrahman Mubarak Puri could not have children. So Sheikh Abdurrahman Mubarak Puri married the second wife of his brother, and then he raised his nephews. And so he educated them. And Maulana Amin Athari, he was a prominent Ahl Hadith scholar in India, and he was member of the Jamaat Islami as well. So in Pakistan, Maulana Abdul Ghafar Hassan and Abdul Rahim Ashraf, they left Jamaat Islami because they disagreed with the Maulana Maududi, because Maulana Maududi only they said after the defeat in the election, they said we should give more focus on education. And obviously Maulana Maududi, he believed that the elections were rigged. Sheikh Abdul Ghafar Hassan explains in his maqalat. Yes, Maulana Amin Athari, he's the nephew of Sheikh Abdurrahman Mubarak Puri and his student. And Amin Athari's son, he's Maulana Ghazi Uzair Mubarak Puri. And that's why they say Ghazi Uzair Mubarak Puri, they call him Al-Hafid. But he's not the grandson of Allama Abdurrahman Mubarak Puri. He and Sheikh Rizala Mubarak Puri, they were grandchildren of the brother of Abdurrahman Mubarak Puri. People used to write Al-Hafid, meaning grandsons, but they were not grandsons of Sheikh Abdurrahman Mubarak Puri. They were the grandsons of the brother of Sheikh Abdurrahman Mubarak Puri. But Sheikh Rizala Mubarak Puri and Sheikh Amin Athari and Sheikh Ghazi Uzair, they're cousins, because their fathers, the father of Sheikh Rizala Mubarak Puri, he's a great muhaddis of India. He passed in the 2000. And the biography of Sheikh Rizala Mubarak Puri will be present in my next collection of 50 biographies, in which there will be the biography of Hafiz Abdul Mannan Nur Puri, the biography of Zubair Alizai, and many other scholars. So in my next book, inshallah, which I intend to publish this year. So Sheikh Rizala Mubarak Puri, he passed away in 2000. People call him Al-Hafiz or Ghazi Uzair, but they're cousins, they're not grandsons. Because their grandfather was the brother of Sheikh Abdurrahman Mubarak Puri, but because he raised them, he was like an adoptive father. That's why people called them Al-Hafid. You understand? Ghazi Uzair Mubarak Puri, and Ghazi Uzair was the son of Maulana Amin Athari. And Sheikh Rizala Mubarak Puri was a great muhaddis. He has done the tahqiq of Kitab al-Azama. In the introduction, he refutes as well Allama Zahid al-Kawthari's criticism of Imam Abu Sheikh, because Imam Allama Kawthari said that he had tajseem and he has been weakened and by Hafiz Asal. And Ghazi Uzair, in a lengthy introduction, he refuted Allama Kawthari and said none of the Salaf did the weekend, and Alam Muallimi before as well, he explained this, that Hafiz. So he's a great muhaddis, and he was member of Jamia here to Ras Kuwait, and he was a member of the Jamiat Al Hadith in India. He was the Mu'tamad Khas of Jamia here to Ras Kuwait, Sheikh Rizala Mubarak Puri. So he's a great muhaqqiq, respected in the Arab world. He had translated as well Sheikh Abdurrahman Abdul Khaliq's book about entering parliaments, in which there's the fatwa of Sheikh Sa'di, Sheikh Albani, Sheikh Ibn Baz, Sheikh Ibn Uthaymeen. So he was a great scholar, muhaddith, because the brother asked me, that's why I had to explain. So Sheikh Amin said in India he was part of Jamaat Islami, and Sheikh Abdul Ghaffar Hassan and Sheikh, but Sheikh, in Pakistan they left. Sheikh Amin Athari, I don't know if he left, but Sheikh Abdul Ghaffar Hassan in the Makatib Mubarak Puri, written by Sheikh Amin Athari, he wrote, while he was teacher in Medina University, he wrote a letter to Maulana Amin Athari saying, why the scholars of Jamaat Islami, they're not refuting the book Khilafat and Mulukiyat of Maulana Maududi. And Maulana Amin Athari, so he indirectly incited Maulana Amin Athari to take a stand, about the book. And so Maulana Athari, while being a member of Jamaat Islami, a prominent Al-Hadith scholar, he wrote articles and a reply to, in Pakistan, the famous reply was written by Hafiz Salahuddin Yusuf, introduced by Sheikh Yusuf Binori. And in India, Maulana Amin Athari, who was member of Jamaat Islami, he refuted Maulana Maududi's book Khilafat wa Mulukiyat, and the one who incited him was Sheikh Abdul Ghaffar Hassan. So Maulana Amin Athari, I don't know if he left, but he was member. But likewise, Sheikh, what's his name is? Sheikh Abdul Ghaffar Hassan, he left because he had different views on elections. He said because the politics is too corrupt, we won't be successful. But Maulana Maududi said, no, these elections were rigged, maybe next time we will be successful. So, and the other, Abdul Ghaffar Hassan mentioned other issues in his interviews, you can read them. He says because there was nepotism and injustices and this and that in the committees. And he says, look, how can we give to people while we have nepotism and, and after there were personal issues and rivalry in the Jamaat. So he left Jamaat Islami, and then after he taught in Jamia Salafia, Faisalabad, and then after he went to Medina University, where Sheikh Ismail Salafi recommended him after Sheikh Nasruddin Albani left. They asked Sheikh Ismail Salafi to teach hadith, but he said, because I'm the head of the Jamiat, I've got lots of works. He recommended Hafiz Muhammad Gondelvi and Sheikh Abdul Ghaffar Hassan. And Sheikh Abdul Ghaffar Hassan was teaching Bulugh al-Maram in the same way as Sheikh Ubaidullah Mubarak Puri taught him, upon the same tradition. So Sheikh Dr. Asrar Ahmed, he was the same. He left Jamaat Islami because he thought elections won't be fruitful. Obviously, other scholars, that's scholarly opinion. Other scholars, they carried on politics, like Allama Ihsanillah Zahir, and they believe that even if you can't make a big change, you can still, like Maulana Moinuddin Lakvi, he done a deal with Nawaz Sharif, and that I will only support you and Ziaul Haq if I get the Islamic law of in adherence. It is in the Hayat wa Khidmat. Allama Abdul Ghaffar Hassan, Hayat wa Khidmat, written by Dr. Suhail Hassan and Suhaib Hassan, and it was published by Maktaba Islamia. So what I'm saying is, but despite Sheikh Abdul Ghaffar Hassan leaving Jamaat Islami, you can read his interview, he would visit his former students. Qadi Hussain Ahmed was his former student, Maulana Khurshid Ahmed, because he taught them hadith. His book Intikhab Hadith, he was like one of the head of education in Jamaat Islami. So he was teaching hadith to the Jamaat Islami students. So whenever, that when he was teaching in Medina, whenever students would come, he would visit them. When the Deobandi scholars would come, he would visit them. So, he only left them because of political views, but he carried on cooperating with all the scholars and visiting them and having courteous relation with all the scholars. So what I was saying is Dr. Asrar Ahmed, he left Jamaat Islami because he had the same views that, elections, first we need to prepare youth, first we need tasfiyah tarbiyah, and then he made his Tanzim Islami separate. But he was the same mentality of Maulana Maududi from his school, so he was independent Hanafi. Because Maulana Maududi, he was an independent Hanafi, and on many issues he would leave the Hanafi madhab to take other opinions. He was mainly Hanafi, but he was not Muta'assib Hanafi. Like I've said in my previous podcast, Maulana Maududi, he would refute sometimes the Hanafi mazhab, and Sheikh Salahuddin Yusuf quoted his views on the issue of khula, in which he agreed with the Shafi'is and the others. So that's the backstory of Dr. Asrar Ahmed, that he, Sheikh Abdul Ghaffar, Hassan and others, they were in Jamaat Islami and they left because of elections reason, not be. Sheikh Abdul Ghaffar Hassan, you can read this interview, he didn't leave. He still had his view that you should cooperate with others, and he used to cooperate and visit all scholars around the world. And he still used to respect, if you read his interview, he said that Maulana Maududi was Bare Nafis Insan, he was a good person and this and that. And at the same time, he's refute his mistake. He would write to Amin Asari that someone should write a response. So that's why brothers, they can't understand it. You can respect a scholar and at the same time refute his mistakes. You can love Imam Nawawi and at the same time refute his mistakes. You can love Ibn Hajar Suyuti. And Hafiz Suyuti was a Shadhili and he wrote books to defend the Shadhili, Abul Hassan Shadhili. So I use the need to grow up and see the ways of the scholars, the major scholars of our times. So I will carry on, now finish that Maulana Amin Athari was member of Jamaat Islami and he still criticized Maulana Maududi while being a member, and he was the nephew and the students of Sheikh Abdurrahman Mubarak Puri. So now I will carry on, because this book, that's the book of a Mukalma of Hafiz Muhammad Zubair. So I will just read from it and translate it, because Hafiz Muhammad Zubair, in a certain way, he's my teacher. I only attended 2 of his lessons on Usul Hadith, because he was teaching Usul Hadith in a place. But due to scheduling and lessons, I had to attend other lessons, but I had the opportunity to attend 2 of his lessons on Usul Hadith, Hafiz Muhammad Zubair. And Hafiz Muhammad Zubair, he is a son-in-law of Sheikh Abdurrahman Madani, who is the nephew of Abdullah Ropari. And he's his son-in-law, and he's also a member of, he's a student of Dr. Asrar Ahmed, and he's member of the Tanzim Islami of Dr. Asrar Ahmed. And he's in certain way my teacher. He introduced my book, The Reality of Ibn Arabi, which you can see it has been he introduced it with Sheikh Nabil Nisar and Sheikh Muhammad Tanzil Siddiqi Husseini. Sheikh Muhammad Tanzil, he's the among the ancestors of Allama Shamsul Haq Adim Abadi. So he's a well-known historian of the Al-Hadith Jamaat. In his introduction, he explained how Wahdatul Wujood was entered in India and how King Akbar, he implemented, the Dini Ilahi was a reflection of Wahdatul Wujood. Sheikh Nabil Nisar Sheikh, you all know him, mashallah. In his introduction, he said that his intention is to write a tafsir in English. So I'm waiting. Sheikh Nabil Nisar, may Allah protect him. And may Allah give him tawfiq to complete his PhD and all other stuff, and his project of writing a tafsir in English. May Allah give him strength. And so Sheikh Nabil Nisar Sheikh, he wrote some of the Kufriyat of Ibn Arabi. And Dr. Hafiz Muhammad Zubair, he also introduced, because he has lots of work on Wahdatul Wujood. And in his introduction, he explained how the Qadianis, they used some of the views of Ibn Arabi on the seal of the saint, of the prophethood not ending, only prophet of Tashri ending. So all the stuff, lots of the stuff that Mirza Ghulam Qadiani said that I'm a Ghair Tashri prophet, you understand, I'm a Buruzi prophet, he took it from Ibn Arabi. So that's in his introduction of the Dr. Zubair in my book. That's how he explained the dangers of how Ibn Arabi. And this book, it's a summary. Basically, it's a summary of, it contains Mullah al-Qari and Hafiz Sakhawi and Hafiz Biqawi quotes, 200 scholars who have done takfir of Ibn Arabi. And mostly these scholars, the Ashari and Maturidi, like Hafiz Biqai and Hafiz Sakhawi. And it goes also the Subki, Aiz ibn Abd al-Salam, Hafiz ibn Daqiq al-Aid. Even opponents of Ibn Taymiyyah, Ashari Maturidi, they would do takfir and burn the books of Ibn Arabi, Fusus al-Hikam. So now, lots of the people, because Dr. Ibn Arabi, obviously, so I've got like almost a 2 hours video on the Ahl Hadith views, scholars on Ibn Arabi, and I explained why Nawab Siddiq Hasan Khan and Mian Aziz, so I won't go over it. People can refer on my channel to my previous video, because Mian Aziz and Delvi and Nawab Siddiq Hasan Khan, they only defended him because they said, like Allama Shahraini said, maybe his enemies inserted the Ittihadi material in his books. And I have shown, look, that was the husnul zan. But we have to judge based on the appearance, because now people find the Egyptian publisher Fusus Hikam, he brought 6 different manuscripts, some handwritten by his own students, and some of the shuruhat of his own student, of Ibn Arabi. So I explained in the introductions that, quoting from the Sheikh Daghash Ajmi, that there's so many manuscripts of Fusus al-Hikam and Shuruhat written by his own students, and there's handwritten manuscript of Futuhat al-Makkiyah by his own handwriting and by his own students' handwriting. So who inserted these matters? So, some scholars, maybe they had husnul zan, but once an independent researcher, we don't like to give takfir to, if there's an option, someone is not a kafir. But once the different manuscripts and the shuruhat of his main students and students, they all quote the same kufri statements, which Mullah Ali Qari and Taftazani said it's kufri statement, Hafiz Sakhawi, Hafiz Biqai. They said that the idol worshippers, those who worship idols, they only worshipped Allah and they will be drowned in the ocean, in the Qawm Nuh. And all his other stuff, you understand? So they quoted the same stuff and they say it's kufri and shirki. So, these statements of Ibn Arabi. So Mullah Ali Qari wrote a book, Taftazani, that the leaders of the Maturidi and Ashari schools of thought, and Hafiz Sakhawi Biqai. So what I'm saying is, because Ibn Arabi, some Ahl Hadith scholars defended him, like Mian Azuri Sandilvi, because he was a Zahiri in fiqh. He used to say woman in menses. He was a big lover of Ibn Hazm, because he grew up in Andalus. So in fiqh, he would give fatwa according to the Zahiri mazhab and say woman in menses can enter masajid. And he was against taqlid. He would forbid blind following. But in Aqidah, he was Batini. He used to follow the views of Ibn Sina, Farabi and others, that there's some hidden knowledge and the seal of the saints. He knows better. And, he said in his book, Anqa Maghrib, that the banner of the seal of the saints, Abu Bakr's banner will be under him. And even the prophets take the Batini knowledge from the face, from the emanation of the seal of the saints. And he said it's no problem, because, sometimes a human being right and prophet can make ijtihadi mistakes. So you understand, like Umar was right about the people of Badr. So it doesn't make him superior in all sense. So in this sense of Batini knowledge, the seal of the saints is he's superior to all the prophets and all the companions. And they take this from him, and it was his role to disclose that those who worship the calf, those who worship, they only worship Allah and an emanation of Allah, but because they were blinded by their eyes and they saw the physical shape, that's why they become kafir, because they restricted kufr to they restricted divinity to the calf, to the idols, or to Isa. But if they had generalized it to the whole of the creation, they would have a muwahid. So that's what Ibn Arabi said, that's what the shuruhat of his Fusus al-Hikam say, and that's the reason why Hafiz Sakhawi, Hafiz Biqai, Ibn Hajar, they have done takfir of him. Even the Subkis and many other of Ibn Taymiyyah's opponents, Asharis, they have done takfir. Even Alauddin Bukhari, who used to say Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah is not Shaykh al-Islam, he was a harsh opponent, Alauddin Bukhari of Ibn Taymiyyah. He wrote a book against Ibn Arabi, saying his statements in Fusus, he's pure kufr. So that's what people, they say, because after some scholars, they use Wahdatul Wujood, but they use it in a metaphorical manner. Sheikh Bakr Abu Zayd wrote some issues about it, that the Wahdatul Wujood of Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani, they use the word fana in a metaphorical manner, and it is translated in English, the book Al-Ubudiyya of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, translated by Sheikh Farid Haibatan, published by Hidayah. You can read it. They say the concept of fana and baqa, they say once you have extinguished, you only exist by the power of Allah, you have destroyed your desire. So these are metaphorical concepts. So Ibn Taymiyyah, when he mentions the concept of fana and baqa, they have a metaphorical meaning, and he explained it in his Kitab Al-Ubudiyya. There's many translation of it. You can buy any of them and you can read. So some scholars, they use the same concept, but in a metaphorical manner. But they will say, like Mian Azuri Sandilvi and Nawab Siddiq Hasan Khan, though they said because some scholars like Suyuti defended him, others like Ibn Taymiyyah have done takfir, would give husn zan, maybe matters of ittihad have been inserted. But at the same, some of Mian Azuri Sandilvi students, they debated him like Shamsullah Qasim, Hadi Bashiruddin Qanuji and others. But the main thing is, Mian Nazir Sandilvi and Nawab Siddiq Hassan Khan, though they might have no takfir because they say, look, the scholar differ, maybe it's inserted, manners of Ittihad, but they all affirm that Allah is fawqa arshi ba'in an khalqihi. So they will say Allah's essence is separate from the essence of the creation, you understand? So they will affirm two existences and two creations. And Allah's, His mustawi ala arshihi. So that defense is only defense about takfir. It's not defense of Wahdatul Wujood, you understand? There's nothing Wahdatul Wujood in the books of Nawab Siddiq Hassan Khan and Mian Nazir Sandilvi. And I've explained already in my lessons on Ahl Hadith scholars and a great Jamaat of Ahl Hadith scholars do takfir, like Shamsullah Qasim Abadi, Allama Sanillah Zahir and many others. Some they refrain because they give him the opinion of doubt. So not my teacher, Dr. Hafiz Muhammad Zubair, I will just read what he says, because he was a student of Dr. Asrar Ahmed. Dr. Asrar Ahmed, I had the chance to attend one of his lessons on a Sunday in Modelton, D Block. And after I had the opportunity to speak to some of his students who came from America and other places, about, I showed them, look, Ibn Taymiyyah, he's doing takfir of Ibn Arabi, and I heard Dr. Asrar believes. So he called me in office and, we had a meeting with him. And he explained to me as well, Dr. Asrar Ahmed does not believe the table, the kursi is Allah's essence, and, he said it's metaphorical, and, so, because I had some relatives who were big fans of him, so obviously they took me there. And, I wanted to know as well. So, Hafiz Muhammad Zubair, Doctor, in his book Mukalama, because he was in Tanzim Islami and he spoke to Dr. Asrar Ahmed. So basically, in a summary, I will read it and translate it. He's saying that Dr. Asrar Ahmed didn't believe in the Wahdatul Wujood of Ibn Arabi, but he would believe in a different concept, which he said was problematic as well, but it was not kufar and shirk, but it was problematic, and he wanted to speak to Dr. Asrar Ahmed. He and other students of Tanzim Islami wanted to take some time to speak to him, but they didn't have the chance, and he passed away. And he said that the current leader, the previous leader of Tanzim Islami, they said we don't agree with the concept of using such terms and such concept, and they even asked Hafiz Muhammad Zubair to write notes on the published books of Dr. Asrar Ahmed to indicate this, that, that's not the view of Tanzim Islami, that's the view of their founder. You understand? So you can't say nowadays if a Salafi is a member of Tanzim Islami, or he's a member of them and teaching them, that he believes in Wahdatul Wujood. You understand? So that's why, some people, that they don't understand this, that like Maulana Amin Asari was member of Jamaat Islami, but he refuted Maulana Maududi on his book Khilafat wa Mulukiyat. So two scholars can be part of the same madrasa, same organization, and they can refute each other. It doesn't mean you have to agree with all the scholars of the same group or same masjid. But if you're working for the greater good in a masjid, they have two imams, the other imam has mistakes, you just be paying to promote your good and teach your aqidah, vasiti and others. You're not responsible for other scholars' mistakes. And because if it's a central masjid or it's a big organization and they have hundreds of thousands of followers, then you can teach them the right material. So, if you're part of a madrasa or an organization which has, hundreds of millions of views, and you, by being member of this organization, teach the correct aqidah to millions of people, why not? So Dr. Isra, and this is a scholar's, he has to do his own ijtihad. It's not YouTubers around or people sitting on the other side of the world who don't know the context of his society in America or China or South Africa. They don't have to dictate to him, where he should work or not. It should be the local scholars who know their local maslaha, and they know if the harms outweigh the benefits or the benefits of the harm. So I will read, he's my teacher. I attended some of his lessons, though I did not complete the book of Mahmud Tahan, but so in his book Mukalama, you can buy it, it's in Urdu, it's very beneficial, He speaks on lots of contemporary issues. So Dr. Asrar Ahmed ka Nazira Wahdatul Wujood. बहुत से दोस्त ये सवाल करते हैं कि क्या डॉक्टर असर अहमद रहमतुल्लाह अलैह वहदतुल वजूद के कायल थे। तो वो मेरा जवाब ये होता है कि एक तो वहदतुल वजूद को भी थोड़ा नजर बयान करते हुए कि ना कि वो अकीदा के तौर पर, और दूसरा ये कोई नजरिया वहदतुल वजूद के कायल थे, वो नजरिया वो नहीं है कि जो शेख इब्न अरबी के कायल थे। सो सेइंग फ्रेंड्स आस्क मी, did Dr. Asrar Ahmed, may Allah have mercy upon him, was he an adept of Wahdatul Wujud? So he said, my answer is he would mention Wahdatul Wujud as a theory, not as a creed. So he presented Wahdatul Wujud as a theory, meaning it was not something that it was part of the Aqidah. If you don't believe it, you're kafir. For the Wujudi people, if you don't believe, for them kufr is to reduce Allah to the calf, to Isa, or to the idols. That's what the explanations of Usus Alaikum said, that if the idol worshippers or the calf worshippers or the worshippers of Isa, they had generalized this to the whole creation, they would be believers. And for them, shirk is to reduce divinity to idols, Isa, or the calf, and Tawheed is to believe Allah is the only existence, and the others are just reflections of Him, mirage or whatever. So he said he did not believe in Wahdatul Wujud as an aqidah, but as a theory, meaning it's like a theory which people can reject or accept. And secondly, the Wahdatul Wujud that he believed in, this was not the creed of Ibn Arabi. डॉक्टर वहदतुल का जो नज़रिया पेश किया था वो classical philosophy or modern science के अमेज था. So he said the theory of Dr. Asrar Ahmad, he was like a modern scientific theory which he presented. He tried to give an explanation about how the Big Bang occurred and the creation occurred from the word kun. So basically he tried to present, like, to appeal to the modern youth, and he tried to present a theory, you understand, based on like a Greek philosophy. जहमिया मुतज़िला के उसूल थे और उनका नज़रिया पर अहम मुफसल गुफ्तु अपनी किताब वजूद बारी ताला मज़हब फ़लसफ़ा साइंस की रोशनी में कर चुके हैं. And he said, I have discussed about these issues. No, what he's saying is that he the concept of Dr. Asrar Ahmad is based on classical philosophy and modern science, while the view of the Wujudi was based on Greek philosophy, Platonism, Jahmi and Mu'tazila's views. And he said, I've explained this in my book Wujood Bari Ta'ala. And he said, वजूदियों के नजरिए के वहदतुल मुरातिब 7 हैं, जबकि तंजीलात 6 हैं. इनका ये कहना है कि अहदत से वहदत, वहदत से वहदियत से रूह, मिसाल जिस्म, और जिस्म से इंसान तंजील होता है. 6-7 मराहिल इब्न अरबी के बाद वजूदियों के हाँ, जबकि इब्न अरबी के 3 मराहिल बयान करते हैं, जिसका खुलासा आलम गायब, आलम बरज़ख, आलम ज़ाहिर. इसके बाद इब्न अरबियों के बाद वजूदियों ने इब्न अरबी के फ़िक्र की बुनियाद में मुतनव्वि तफसीलात के साथ बयान किया है. So then he explained what is the view of Ibn Arabi. And then he said, इसके बरअक्स, contrary to this, Dr. Asrar Ahmad के हाँ मरातिब 3 हैं, उनके नज़दीक कदीम और हादिस हैं, और जो रबते हैं वो कलमा कुन है. So he said that the theory presented by Dr. Asrar Ahmad is there is qadim, meaning the essence of Allah, and the hadith, meaning the creation, and the link between them is the word kun, जिससे सारे मखलूक वजूद में आए हैं. And the word kun generated the whole creation. फुक़हा और मुहद्दिसीन का मौक़िफ़ तो यह कि कलमा कुन कहने से मखलूक वजूद आई है. So he said the creed of the fuqaha and the scholars of hadith is that the word the creation resulted from the word, by Allah saying the word kun. लेकिन डॉक्टर असर अहमद उसको फ़लसफ़ाना रंग देते हुए कहते हैं कि कलमा कुन यानी कलाम इलाही एक खंग नूर की सूरत इख्तियार कर ली. So he said Dr. Asrar Ahmad tried to present a theory, in a philosophical color, and he was trying to say that the kalama kun took like the form of a divine light. You understand? That the kalima kun resulted in the divine speech, then resulted in the form of a light. और पहला मर्तबा ये है कि कुन के एक नूर की सूरत इख्तियार की, that the word kun became like a light, and from this light the angels were created, और इस नूर से फरिश्तों की तख्लीक हुई, और फिर इस नूर से नार यानी आग की सूरत इख्तियार की, and from this light the fire was created, from which the jinns were created. और दूसरा मर्तबा इस मर्तबे नार से जब बेनक हुआ कि उसे सारी कायनात वजूद है, and from it all the creation was created. उसके तीसरे मर्तबे इत्तिका हुआ कि जिससे अल्लाह ने कि इज़न से आदम अलैहिस्सलाम इत्तिका के वजूद में, and from this creation the rest evolved from it, you know, the theory of evolution, and it resulted in the creation by the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala of Adam अलैहिस्सलाम. इर्तिका पसंदों और डॉक्टर इसरार अहमद में फ़र्क ये है, the difference between Dr. Israr Ahmed and the evolutionist is that Dr. Israr Ahmed is saying that they're saying that the process of evolution, going from one step by another, was by natural selection, while according to Dr. Israr Ahmed, it was Khuda ke hukum ke taht tha, meaning all this evolution process that Allah said the word kun, and the word kun like took a form of a light, and from this light fire was created, and from this fire jannat were created, and from this, you know, he tried to give a scientific process to the word kun taking the form of a light. So it was like let's say it was like a Mu'tazili concept, saying the word kun taking like a creation, first it was pronounced by Allah, but then he took like a creational steps, it became part of the creation, and it resulted in a light, and this light created fire, the jinns were created, and Adam evolved from this light, but not by natural selection, but by a process directed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So वहदतुल वजूद के मसले में डॉक्टर असरार अहमद के कलम की दो वजूहात थी जो उन्होंने खुद बयान की थी. एक तो कदीम हादिस के बयान राब्ता तलाश करना. So his concept of वहदतुल वजूद was to find a link between the qadim and the hadith, the creation and the creator. दूसरा बुजुर्ग शख्सियत के तन को दूर करना और दिफा करना था, because he said he wanted to protect great people who believe in वहदतुल वजूद. डॉक्टर इसरार हम अपनी किताब उम्मुल मुसब्बिहात कहते थे कि अगर कोई शेख इब्न अरबी को मुर्तद कहे तो मुझे कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता. He was saying that, you know, if people say Ibn Arabi is kafir, I have no issue, but if people declare Shah Waliullah as opposite, तो this is something, you know, तशवीश की बात है. You know, यानी कि बुजुर्ग शाह वलीउल्लाह मुजद्दद अल-अफसानी के दूर करने के लिए उन्होंने मसला में कलाम किया. So he said his aim was to remove the objections of Shah Waliullah and Ahmed Sayyid Hindi. And there is a lot of discussion about these scholars, but Ahmed Sayyid, he presented a different theory of Wahdatul Shuhud, and Shah Waliullah tried to reconcile between them. But this is outside the topic, you understand, because their speech, some scholars say it's metaphorical, you know, Shah Waliullah and Ahmed Sayyid. It's not the physical Wahdatul Wujud, you understand. So he said that the contemporary scholar who criticized Dr. Israr Ahmad or Wahdatul Wujud have done it without understanding his philosophy and without understanding his, without gathering all his writings. And they try to present his views as similar to Ibn Arabi. He said Dr. Israr Ahmad didn't say, you know, he didn't have the same views as Ibn Arabi. And they say, yeah, हाँ डॉक्टर इरशाद अहमद ने नज़रिया वहदतुल वजूद का दिफा नहीं कर रखा, सिर्फ इतना कह रहा हूँ कि उनका नज़रिया वो नहीं है जो इब्न. He said, I don't want to defend the view of Dr. Israr Ahmad because the view of Dr. Israr Ahmad was wrong and even says it's dangerous, but it is not the same as Ibn Arabi. You understand? So he said some Salafi brothers that criticized me that you're defending Wahdatul Wujud. He said, no, I'm just saying that Ibn Arabi and Dr. Asrar Ahmed's Wahdatul Wujud are different. Dr. Asrar Ahmed ka nazariya bhi mere nazar mein durust nahi. He said the view of Dr. Asrar Ahmed, for me it is wrong. लेकिन वो कुफर और शिरफ को करार देना तो तहक्कुम है, अलबत्ता ये बिदअत कहा जा सकता है. He said, for me, the view of Dr. Asrar Ahmed is not kufr, but you can say it's an innovation. You understand? Saying that the word kun, after it took the form of a light and all of this, and there was like a scientific process between the speech of Allah and the creation, trying to present it in the form of Big Bang. It was an innovation, but it's not kufr. उनकी वफात से पहले उनसे मौजू पर बहुत लोगों ने उनसे गुफ्तगू का वक्त मांगा था, जिस पर राकिम भी शामिल है. He said lots of people wanted to speak to him before to his death to recant from his view, from this view, among which I was member, but we did not have the opportunity to speak. और ये भी वाज़िह है कि वहदतुल वजूद का ये नजरिया तंजीम इस्लामी का नजरिया नहीं. And one should have in mind that this view of Dr. Asrar Ahmed is not the view of तंजीम इस्लामी. और तंजीम इस्लामी ने अपने अकीदे के तौर बयान किया है, लिहाजा बाद सलफियों को तंजीम इस्लामी पर नक़द भी एक गैर अखलाकी रवैया है. He said you should not criticize तंजीम इस्लामी because that's not तंजीम इस्लामी's view, that's Dr. Asrar's personal view. And he said he notes that the Amir of Tanzim Islami, Hafiz Akif Sahid, has instructed me to write notes on the book al-Musabbihat of कि जहाँ जहाँ वो वहदतुल वजूद के बारे में कुछ इश्तिबाहत हैं तो उन पर हवाशी लिखा जाए, और इस किताब राकीम के हवाशी के साथ ही पब्लिश हो रही है. So he said the Emir of Tanzim Islami asked Dr. Zubayr that in the book al-Musabbihat, whenever Dr. Asrar Ahmed spoke about Wahdatul Wujud, that Dr. Hafiz Zubayr should write notes on it and we will publish it with these notes. So he said this is not the view of Tanzim Islami, these were the personal views of Dr. Asrar Ahmed. This is not the view of his Jamaat. And the problem is, the danger, सही बात यह ही है कि कलमा कुन से मखलूक आदम से वजूद में आई, ना कि कलमा कुन ने ही मखलूक की सूरत इख्तियार की. He said the truth is the speech of kun, it led to the creation, and not that the word kun took the shape of the creation. जो कि अगरचे उसकी ज़ात से अलग हो गया था और मखलूक का मज़दर है, और अब उस पर मुतमईन नहीं होता कि ईसाइयों ने हज़रत ईसा के माना लोगों से सब्र करने की कोशिश की है. कुरान मजीद ने भी हज़रत ईसा को कलिमतुल्लाह कहा है, लेकिन इस माने में नहीं कहा जैसे बाइबल में है. So he said that because if you say the word took flesh, this is the creed of the Christians, and the Quran says that Isa was a speech of Allah, but not in the same manner of the Christians, because the Christians say in the beginning was the word, and the word what was God, and the word was God, Genesis 1:1. And the Christians said the God, the speech of God took flesh. So he said that this doctrine of Dr. Asrar Ahmed, in which he tried to link the creation, that the word kun, it was like a Mu'tazili, saying the speech of Allah was created, but he didn't say the creation was Allah, you understand? He said the creation was something other than Allah, but it was a bid'ah concept that the word of Allah, like he took the form of a light, and after it evolved towards the creation. So it was like a Mu'tazili concept, but it was not a wujud, like the wujudi, that the existence of Allah and the existence of the creation is one and the same. So this is what he said, that, and this is not the view of Tanzim Islami, and the next president of Tanzim Islam, he asked Dr. Asrar Ahmed to write notes to explain this in the next book. Wherever Dr. Asrar Ahmed wrote it, so they're correcting, the founder of the organization, they're correcting his mistakes themselves. So now you can't blame a Salafi who is member of Tanzim Islami about the mistakes of the author, because they're reviewing this and correcting them. And the problem is, lots of the brothers, especially in these circles, they need to study the books of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah and others, because I had spoken myself to other members of Tanzim Islami, and they were very confused regarding the issues of Aqidah. Because by saying, on such verses, my relatives were a member of Tanzim Islami, though they were teaching the Shar ibn Abilis Hanafi, so some of them were those Salafi minded, they were strong in Aqidah, but some of the others were just normal workers and students. They had some concepts, these concepts that, Allah insufflated his ruh in Isa. They would give some Sufyan explanations and some others. And this is why, they need to be strong in Aqidah. If you want to lead the Islamic reform in the society, you must be strong in Aqidah. That's why scholars like Ibn Taymiyyah, they led to reforms in societies and big changes against the Tatars and this, because it was based on a strong Aqidah, their reforms. You understand? So, and that's why they could refute Christians, they could refute other sects, the Wujood ibn Arabi, because they understood the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not be created, because all Dr. Asrar Ahmad's mistake was based about, the same concept, logos, and the Sufi speech, because Ibn Arabi says that Allah lahu khalq wal amr, and he says that, the soul of the creation it has two aspects, and he says it in Fusus al-Hikam in many books, that the soul of the creation, it has an aspect which is azali, which is non-created. And in my book, which Sheikh Nabil Nisar and Hafiz Muhammad Zubair introduced, the explanators of the Sharihun of Fusus al-Hikam, they explained this as well, that the soul has one aspect which is azali, which is non-created. And one of the Naqshbandi scholar, Maulana Jami, Abdurrahman Jami, he said that Sadruddin Kunavi said that how he explained, so it's the main students of Ibn Arabi explaining it, you understand? It's not an enemy of Ibn Taymiyyah or an enemy of Ibn Arabi. He says that the souls of the perfect people, soul of Kamilin, they have not been created, but the souls of the Naqis human beings, they have been created. So there is an aspect of the divine in the souls of the perfect people or in the soul of the creation. And they say Allah lahul khalq wal amr, and then they take the other verses that the soul is from Amr. And then the Sufis, Ibn Arabis and others, they have a big problem. And even Maulana Sharaf Ali Thanvi said in one of his books, many Sufis have a big problem with the souls of the saints being uncreated. So this debate exists among the Sufi Turuq and others. So this is why, because Dr. Asrar Ahmad was not a scholar, he was a scientist, and he was with Maulana Maududi, who was himself not very strong in Aqidah, then he left him for political differences. And obviously, that's why people like Hafiz Muhammad Zubair, he's a strong Ibn Taymiyyah, and he's strong in Aqidah, he understands the Aqidah. That's why, and other Salafi members of Tanzim Islami, they're reforming and teaching the right Aqidah in Tanzim Islami. And they're explaining, that how Allah put the soul, it's Izafat al-Shrifi, you understand? This is how Hafiz ibn al-Qayyim, Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, Hafiz ibn Kathir, they said. But some members of Tanzim Islami, which I met 20 years ago, they had no clue, and they were very confused about the soul, how Allah put his soul in Adam. And I was listening to the explanation. I said, look, what are you saying? You're a student of knowledge, you want to reform societies, and you don't even read main tafsir and main stuff. So this is good, like student of knowledge like Hafiz Muhammad Zubair, go into this issue and teach the correct aqidah, that it is like the Naqatullah and like the camel of Allah or the house of Allah. It is Izafat al-Sharifi. And these issues of the logos and the word taking flesh, this is what made Dr. Asrar Ahmad having this mistake, that the word kun became the creation and took the form of light, and from the light the angels were created, the jinns were created, and then this light evolved by the permission of Allah towards Adam. So he tried to link the Qadim with the Hadith by a scientific process of the Big Bang and try to have the evolution theory. So it was an innovative concept. But it was not the Wahdatul Wujood of Ibn Arabi, which says the creation is one and kufr is only to reduce divinity to Isa, the calf, and the idols. And if the Christians had believed everything was Allah and the idols were Allah, there would have been muwahid people. So Dr. Asrar Ahmed did not believe in it. I will do another podcast about Shah Waliullah and Ahmed Sirindi. But today I just wanted to speak about Dr. Asrar Ahmed's view. Dr. Asrar Ahmed's views were not those of Ibn Arabi. He spoke about Wahdatul Wujood, and now his students, they are writing notes on his book to explain properly that these issues and to correct them as well. The concept of Dr. Asrar Ahmed was like a Mu'tazili concept, which he tried to mix the science that the world became created. And this creation, the words of Allah Kun, they took a creation shape, and from it the like a light form, and from this light, Big Bang, and they turned into fire. The angels were created. This fire led to solid, and then Adam was created from it. Not by natural selection, by a scientific process directed by Allah. So it is a highly bid'ah and dangerous concept, but it is not Ibn Arabi's concept. And his own students, they tried to have a meeting with him and speak to him, but they couldn't, and he passed away. But now there's the Tanzim Islami, the president have clarified that they don't believe in this concept of Dr. Asrar Ahmed. So they're going to recorrect his books. And it was a bid'ah concept. The concept of Dr. Asrar Ahmed was a bid'ah, like Mu'tazili type concept. So he had such mistaken views. But after, like, people take Zamakhshari's view good, or they take other Mu'tazili scholars' good books. And, even the Asharis, the Kalam Nafsi is half Mu'tazili. So people still take the views of Ashari scholars, which will say that the letters are created. So that's what his views, that the letter Kun became a light, and from this light a scientific process went on. So it was a bid'ah concept, but that's why our scholars, they shared platform with him, they praised his book. Some of our scholars translated his good books into Arabic. Many of our scholars published his articles. And that's why Salafis, they joined his Jamaat and they try to do Islah in his Jamaat. And this is why I tell the brothers that Amin Asari was a member of Jamaat Islami, the nephew of Shaykh Abdurrahman Mubarakpuri, and he criticized Maulana Maududi while being member of Jamaat Islami in India. Maulana Amin Asari. So you can be member of an institute, of an organization, and by being member of their organization, you reach millions of people around the world that have, thousands of madaris, and you teach them the correct aqidah without you agreeing with another teacher. Like, you can be imam in a masjid, the other imam, he's mistaken, but you're teaching the good aqidah, and it's a central masjid, thousands of people benefit from you. Why should you leave your masjid as long as you make your maqaf clear? You understand? This is what Shaykh Abdul Razak Afifi and others said. According to many of his students, you can cooperate as long as you don't dilute your aqidah, as long as you don't hide your aqidah. If you work with an institute or a tanzim and they ask you to teach the proper aqidah wasitiyah in them, there's no problem with it. Salafi brothers, the son-in-law of Maulana Abdurrahman Madni, he's member of Jamaat Tanzim Islami. Their founders had bid'ah mistake, but they themselves are correcting his books, and they're teaching the Salafi aqidah, and they're refuting Ibn Arabi, they're refuting modernists, and they're teaching, the Taymiyan perspective and the books of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah in Tanzim Islami. So in the same manner, some Ahl Hadith scholars were member of Jamaat Islami and they were teaching Hadith. Maulana Abdul Ghaffar Hassan, they only left because of political differences and nepotism and other issues. But Maulana Amin Asari, he was still member of Jamaat Islami, and Sheikh Abdul Ghaffar Hassan encouraged him to refute Maulana Maududi on his book Khilafat Mulukiyat. And while being a member of Jamaat Islami India, he would refute, Maulana Amin Asari, the nephew and stepson He was the stepson of Allama Abdurrahman Mubarak Puri. So, brothers, they need to read the Tariq al-Hadith and to see that, you can be member of an institute or a madrasa and have access to millions of online followers and teach them the correct aqidah. And if you, as long as you don't compromise your aqidah, you can be members and consult your most elder scholar before giving hukum on Medina students, because if they become leaders like Malcolm X, they become leaders, we want them to become leaders, the Medina students. We want them to be part of international bodies like the Fiqh Council or the Muslim World League or other big institutes who have influence around the world. So we want them to be part of these such organization like Tanzim Islami and try to teach them the correct aqidah and correct their mistakes wherever So this is what our Al-Hadith scholars are doing around the world. They're being part of organization, bodies, and trying to teach the correct view in them and try to reform them as much as they can. Dar Ulum Nadwa had all schools of thought, and from its founding members to nowadays, Maulana Rahmani, the author of Al-Hadith Tariq Siyasat, he was member of the Nadwa committees. Up to now, Maulana Mukhtar Ahmed Nadwi was member of the committees of Dar Ulum Nadwa. So you can be a member, an advisor of an international university without agreeing with them, with other teachers or other of their academics. As long as you're clear on your views, you don't dilute your views, and you present your views, you understand? And your views are orthodox, you understand? You don't say, oh, Asharism is right, Salafism is right. No, if you say, no, for me this is right only, and now they have another Ashari researcher, that's not your view, that's clear, that's good enough. As long as your body doesn't teach the wrong aqidah, or the institute doesn't teach the wrong aqidah, or you just hired by the masjid to teach the good aqidah, you're just doing your work for which you're being paid off. So I will end my paper on Dr. Asrar Ahmed, that his concept was like a Mu'tazili evolutionist concept, which was still bad, which was an innovation, which was very dangerous. But it was not like the Ibn Arabi's one. So I will end on this. Wa sallallahu ala nabi.